Okay, we are now putting this session to record. So good evening again to each and everyone. Happy 75th PCU. So I think we enjoyed PCU for the gold ba? 75th is gold. So I have just seen the Facebook of some administrators and the president. So PCU is celebrating its 75th founding anniversary. I think it's a week-long celebration. And last week we had a meeting with the administrators and the different extension groups. So we are called extension group, no? For the transnational education extension program of PCU. And we had a meeting. So I think across Philippines and other countries, we are about 20 plus coordinators, no, of the different extension or the groups for PCU graduate school program. So we had meeting regarding policies, change of administrations, or there are some movements with their offices. So we are still under the president in the organization structure. So the president heads the transnational education extension program. And I think that was the advantage, no, which I mentioned, that the president is hands-on with the program that we have right now. And then from the president's office goes directly to the vice president for globalization and extension, which is headed by Dr. Margie de la Cruz. And the office, former office of Dr. de la Cruz is now headed by Dr. Jeffrey Perida. So he is now the director for the TINEP, no? Transnational Education Extension Program. So si Doc Margie ay VP na. So si Dr. Jeffrey Perida is now the director. And then under him, I think I've given you the slides, no, of some personnel or staff, no, which we can communicate to PCU. So from Dr. Perida, Jeffrey Perida, now the director, we are under Master in Management. No? We are under the leadership or the administration of Miss Joanne. No? Miss Joanne Rosales. So we can all access them through our Gmail account, no, at pcu.edu.ph. So Miss Joanna Rosales is the department chair for Master in Business. So not Master in Master in Management. So we are all part of the Master in Management program. So yung data natin nandun din kay Miss Joanna. And then we have some staff, no, under the TINEP, which we can also contact. You have, I think I gave you some of the names, no, for official receipt, for statement of accounts, generics, official receipt. We have Camille. And then for the registrar, Miss Grace Musa. Okay. And then another office, which is also part of our extension, which we get our copy of registration of certificate, no, our enrollment, official enrollment form. That is the office of Dr. Vida Jimenez. Dr. Vida is the director for online education and professional advancement, OEPA. And then under her, yung ating kako-communicate si Miss Janine. I think if you have came across kay Mr. Joshua si Balad. So siya yung nagpa-process, siya yung nag-update sa ating mga requirements if we want them delivered to our places. Yung ID, yung registration certificate. Yung registration certificate is the RC. Ito yung the usual enrollment form. So after tayo nagbayad, nakalagay doon kung ano yung enrolled subjects natin, tapos ano yung ating binayad, tapos yung ating matriculation schedule. So nandun sa RC. So that is under the office of Dr. Vida. Si Miss Janine ang nag-encode. So I gave the schedule to Miss Janine. Tapos once the student inquire for an RC, so yun ang kanyang piniprint out. Nandun na yung enrollment. So just we make sure na tayo ay thesis or non-thesis. So I think majority are under non-thesis. Okay, so and then we have the birthday celebrant or the one celebrating his birthday today. Vice President na rin siya, VP for Information Communications Technology, si VP Mario Miranda. So siya yung head dun sa ating group chat ng IT para sa ating mga ID, Blue Book, and then we also can get there the link to our e-learning resources, ating library. So pwedeng mag-ask doon kung paano makapunta doon sa ating e-library. So meron tayong mga link doon. So sila naman yun, sila Titus doon sa group ng group chat natin ng IT department. So who else? We still have the same Dr. Jaime Ang, the research director. So if you have opened our sessions, recorded sessions na nasa ating Google Classroom, dun sa mga webinar sessions, so I think Dr. Ang spoke about the research agenda of PCU. Okay, who else? Of course, our president, Dr. Junipen Guanan. So sila yung ating mga direct contacts sa PCU in terms of the things that we need. This is the organization they have prepared for blended platform. So would there be any questions on that area before we proceed to the next discussion? Okay lang ba yung mga request nyo? I think it was mentioned in the orientation and even when we invite the PCU, personnel, staff. So meron talagang leeway. So kumbaga open tayo ng 24/7, but there is a leeway to, I hope we can still use the word prompt, reply. But sabi naman nila, give us 2 to 3 days. So especially pag ganito weekend, nagjo-duty pa rin sila, but parang give them daw the 2 to 3 days. So to answer all the queries, yung ating mga email, yung ating mga sinisend sa kanila. Okay? And there's no problem if we can be near to the school. You can always go to your school. Kasi enrolled tayo officially sa Philippine Christian University. So we can always visit. Okay? So hopefully lahat tayo meron na tayong mga ID, meron na tayong mga RC, o napaprocess na ang ating mga, those are the two important documents. And then of course our at pcu.edu.ph na Gmail. Importante yon kasi we use that all the time. Yes, may problema? May question doon sa area na yon? Konti lang naman ang nare-receive kong PM na, Doc, hindi nagre-reply si ganito. So, pag tinanong naman kailan sinen, kahapon lang, hintay natin ng konti. And kung tatagal talaga, I always tell the student, send me again the document so I can be the one to follow up or make to forward PCU. Yung mga tumagal naman sa IT, nagsisend naman ako ng message kay Titus. So baka nasapawan dahil sa maraming nagre-request. Okay. And according to the record, I think parang I don't know if number 1 ang PCU dito sa blended in terms of enrollment. So talagang marami silang estudyante ngayon. And among the groups ng TNET, it was mentioned in the meeting na ang MM-Collab daw ay finalist sa most engaged group. So I would like to thank you all. Tayo daw ang most engaged, so marami daw tayong ganap. Ang MM-Collab daw mga addict. So I think we started the ball roll of giving webinar sessions initiative. Nag-initiate tayo ng mga webinar sessions sa MM-Collab, and then we invited the entire PCU. So we started that last year. So marami tayong mga ginawa for supposed to be for MM-Collab. So we agreed upon dun sa pool of faculty na we work together to supplement the students with engagement or activities. And isa dun sa pinaka-importante is yung supplement na makukuha natin sa sharing or conversations during webinar sessions. So tayo naman ang nag-initiate nun, and then yun ang ating I think evident, kasi sabi nila ginagamit yun, lalo na tayo ngayon autonomous, tapos nag-a-apply ata ang program ng management for level 4 accreditation. So kailangan nila ng mga ganong documents. So hindi naman tayo nagdamot. So we initiated that. We contact friends and colleagues to help. And I think naging successful naman tayo. So ngayon marami nang nagko-collaborate. So if I send you invitations, hopefully you can, because I also prepare e-certificate. So those are equivalent to hours of engagement. So sayang din yun kung kailangan nyo ng certificate, because these are all part of being in the graduate school. Okay? So far, questions before we proceed? Sana lahat po ay membro na ng group chat, So yung iba kasi naliligaw pa rin, So sana membro na tayo ng group chat. Sabi nga ng ating orientation, we are not strictly following our schedule in terms of the classroom, because some of the students may not have the fit to synchronous classes, kaya yung iba join another class, so no problem with that, you can PM the professor, but as long as at the end of the semester mayroong 4 na professor na magbibigay sa iyo ng grade sa 4 na subject. So you have to be at constant with the professor kasi sila yung magbibigay ng grade. And I think to reiterate, that's the reason why hindi tayo muna nag-enroll sa Blue Book. Okay? Though Blue Book or Google Classroom is similar, hindi tayo nag-enroll doon kasi ang Blue Book ay very strict, no, dun sa enrollment ng student. So you're only enrolled in one particular subject. Kaya pag nandun tayo, hindi tayo nagiging flexible. Kasi ang IT, ini-enroll tayo sa 4 lang na subject, yung sa schedule lang ng professor. So I think we mentioned that one. Though in the next semester, if there are some professors that will request dun sa other subjects, specialization, that the professor will use the blue book, no problem. I can tell immediately the IT department to enroll this class in the blue book kasi nandun yung professor. So walang problema. I have received some other group chats that the professor is requesting for the blue book. So yun, nag-enroll sila. But yun lang, dun lang sila naka-enroll, no? So unlike ngayong semester, marami kayong common subjects, no, na pwede dun sa isang group, pwede dun sa isang group. So yung iba nag-mix, no? Kasi same professor lang naman but different ang kanyang time. So pwedeng dun siya sa kabila. Or another professor ni-request, but as long as at the end may magbibigay sa iyo ng grade. So walang problema doon. At the end of the semester, we will be submitting. So you will submit to me a grade form. This is our document, no, to give us the progress of our term, no. Pwede namang mag-request sa PCU, but every school, pag nag-request ka ng form, I think sa PCU is 300, no, to give you a TOR, running TOR, something like that, no. But for our group, mayroon tayong form, no? Mayroon tayong form na nandun na yung grade nyo, and then I sign, and then that would be a record keep, no, para ma-track, no? Especially pag iba-iba na yung professors, kasi minsan each professor kasi submits, no, to the PCU ang kaniyang documents at the end of the term, no? Yung screenshot ng classes, yung mga papel ng estudyante, the syllabus. So lahat yan, no, part yan ng clearance ng professor. So minsan na-overwhelm, no, ang record keeping. Kaya yun ang nangyari ngayon, no, sa nagko-compre. So may mga nakikita sila doon na wala pang record ang registrar. Pero sa atin, kompleto na yung record natin. Kasi nga individual ang submission ng professor. So I always ask the professor at the end of the SEM yung mga grades nyo para may kopya ako. So I can also give you the grade. And then I can also tell you in advance dun sa mga grades nyo kasi minsan binibigay ng prof, nakalagay dun, halimbawa pangalan, tapos nakalagay INC. So hindi pa siya nagbibigay ng grade. So at least I can tell the student na your grade, your remarks as of today is INC. So please tell your professor ano yung kulang mo. Bakit ka INC pa rin? Or INC ang binigay sa iyo. So at least nagkakaroon ng communication, no, para mabigyan ng grade. Okay. So yun ang gagawin natin by January. So every semester meron tayong report ng grades. Okay? But you can always ask after if you want, no, sa PCU. Mayroon na silang form, request form. I think nasa 300 pesos yun para dun sa printing ng COR. Pero tayo meron tayong mga record keep. Okay. What else? So I think yun lang, no, as of today, yun ang mga nababasa ko sa mga messages. So yung iba hindi pa nakapunta sa classroom. So please make sure na meron tayong group chat, meron tayong Google Classroom. Tapos some professors gave you advance, no? Na-enroll na kayo dun sa Google Classroom kahit sa November pa sila or next month pa sila, no? Ang assignment kasi, that is, sorry, when I say assignment of the sequence, I think the word is sequence, the sequence of schedule, no, dun sa ating schedule na nakita, yung sequence doon is only for synchronous classes, no? Para hindi siya overwhelming. So what we did was first month isang subject, tapos second, third, fourth. Okay? But as mentioned in our orientation and the last meetings that we had, baka masyadong sikip, no? Pag i-entertain mo yung fourth subject mo doon na sa dulo. So as early as now, at least alam mo na, no, na meron akong third subject, meron akong fourth subject, ito na yung kanyang mga requirements ni Prof. So nakikita na sa classroom, no? Kahit hindi pa kayo nagmi-meet, no? Kasi ang meeting is the synchronous. So after our meeting in research, I will give you now the next professor and then the next professor. Pero yung ating classroom, it will be open until the end of the SEM. So yung mga hindi pa nakapag-submit, nandun pa rin sa classroom, no? You can always go back. So ina-arrange lang natin ng ganito para hindi tayo ma-overwhelm, no? Dun sa kung ano na yung nagaganap, no? Kasi 4 na subject, no? So mahirap din yun. Kaya meron tayong mga Google Classroom prepared for the 4 subjects, no? So if that is not scheduled for the synchronous, at least you can still at least you can visit, okay, and look for whatever requirements, no, future requirements na mangyayari. And then once matapos na yung synchronous, hindi siya nag-e-end, no? Hindi nag-e-end doon ang subject. It will still be until January. Okay? It will still be until January. So you can still have time to submit. Otherwise, if that is really needed for reporting, so kailangan nyo mag-submit, no? Kasi may mga subjects na nauna, no? So mag-group tayo, tapos magre-report. So kailangan gawin natin ngayon kasi yun ang schedule, no? But the rest, mga project, final exam, report, so it can go as far as the last day, no? Which is I think January 5, no? Ang last day. So ginawa lang nating December kasi nga after that, yun na, submission na ng ating mga papel. Okay? So yun ang ating proseso, no? Para hindi tayo masyadong ma-toxic, no, dun sa 4 na subject. So any question towards that end? May tanong ba doon? So far, meron ba?
None po daw.
Okay. So yung iba pupunta sa PCU to pick up their ID. Okay? So no problem. If you really want, no? If you really want to have your photo, yung Photoshop, yung Photoshop, yung actual, you can always go to PCU. Doon sa 4th floor, nandun yung IT, nandun ang office ni VP Miranda, nandun si Titus, nandun yung mga tao doon. So, doon ka mismo magpapa-ID. And then, right then, ipiprint yung ID na may lace. So, pwede mo makuha, no? Okay? So, walang problema. You don't need to have the services of Joshua, no, para sa delivery. Okay. Marami lang yung mga nagpapa-deliver kasi nga wala sila sa kanilang schedule. Kaya mag-send tayo magpa-process, no? Pero pag gusto nyo sa PCU, of course you can go there earlier time para pag sinabing baka may mga pila or what, no? So earlier time para pwede ka namang, kung pabalikin ka, pwede namang nandyan naman ang Robinson, so pwedeng lakad-lakad muna or tambay-tambay muna doon, no? Pero I think parang mabilis naman kasi electronic, no? So far, no, yung kami nagpa-ID. So mabilis naman siya. Okay? So pag nakuhanan ka ng picture tapos nandun yung mga details, mabilis naman. Basta importante meron ka ng Gmail, no? Meron kang PC at pcu.edu. Kasi doon i-store lahat, no? So yun ang pinakaunang step. Tapos meron kang meron kang registration certificate, yung RC, okay? Tapos magpa-ID ka. Kasi nandun makikita nila doon sila doon ang input nila yung ID number, student number, yung course mo. So nandun, no? Pag physical, pupunta ka doon physical. So wala namang problema so far, no, yung mga nagpunta doon physical. They were able to get away, no, the ID and the RC. Sabi naman ng PCU, wala silang skeletal force. So all of them are work on site. So I think no problem. Paano i-process yung mga nasa outside Manila? Even in Manila, we process that through the ITD group chat. Nandun lahat, no? Nandun lahat yung form para paano makuha yung ID, paano ma-process ang ID, no? Paano ma-process yung RC, no? Kasi kasama na agad yun, no? And then you always, I think I gave you Miss Maan. So always PM si Miss Maan. Okay. Walang problema doon. Sana pwedeng email yung ID and RC sa students. Ang problema, sino ang gagawa? Kasi walang ganun ang process ng TCU. So, ang ginawa ko lang I requested, no, the student, si Joshua, to help me, no, with that, no. Ang ginawa naman ni Joshua, mail siya, no? Pero kayo nga mag-usap kung magkano yung bayad, kung saang lugar, saang address, in-email. Yeah, marami namang nakaabot sa ibang bansa. Natanggap naman nila. Or dun sa mga other places sa Pilipinas. They were able to get their ID and RC. Mag-communicate lang kay Joshua, no, kay Balad. Kasi siya yung humihingi ng listahan kung ready for pick up na. Kasi yung pick up is by group, no, para hindi naman siya paisa-isang pumunta sa PCU, no. So pag may naka-group na ready na for pick up, so pinupuntahan niya sa PCU tapos dinideliver na, no, kung saang lugar man yung estudyante. Okay? So our first batch of graduating students will take their comprehensive exam next 2 Sundays, Saturday and Sunday from now. So October 16 and 17. So sila yung ating first batch. And hopefully after that, yun na yun, graduation. And ang mga PhD, gagawa na ng kanilang dissertation. So that was exactly 1 year. No? We started last year, tapos ito na sila, no? Tapos na sa kanilang academic subjects. So ganun din tayo, 3 sem lang. So 12 units, 12 units, 12 units, that's 36. Okay? Sa PhD din ganun, 12 units, 12 units, 12 units, 36. After that, another 12 units for dissertation. So magiging 48. So yun ang ating track, no, para sa ating program. Now, maraming nang mag-i-enroll ng PhD. So pag ikaw ay PCU, ang masters mo, hindi na kailangan ng bridging, no? Non-thesis ka, gusto mo mag-PhD. So hindi na kailangan ng bridging program kasi taga PCU ka. So you can automatically enroll sa PhD without bridging courses. Tapos you can have your PhD. Kasi pagdating sa PhD talagang compulsory naman ang thesis, no? Yung dissertation. So maraming tutuloy, no? From master's going to PhD program. Okay? So if there are no more questions towards that topic, I hope we are okay. So always PM lang pag may problema. Okay, let me share my screen, our screen. Okay, so this is our classroom again. I would like to thank those who have submitted their task number 1 and task number 2. So meron na tayong nag-submit ng task number 2. So we have 9 here who submitted their task number 2. And then we actually have around 50 plus, no? 50 plus submitted their task number 1. So I hope that all of us will have the time, no? For our class requirements. Let me just reiterate. So yung ating class requirements, ito, no? We are expected to have outputs for task number 1, which is on research scaffold. And then we shall have task number 2, yung skeletal IMRAD, with emphasis on the introduction and then the related literature and studies. And then we shall have task number 3, emphasis naman on methodology, attach our data instruments or the data itself, no, that which we are going to use for our study, no. And then task number 4, which is the final manuscript, no? This is now with the results, discussion, implication, acknowledgement, and references. I think one student mentioned about, can you give me the template of our output? This one, this is the template. So task number 4 is the template. No? So if you open this one, if you open the task number 4 template, ito yon, no? So ito yung ating template. So isulat mo na yung title mo, proponent. Okay? Proponent or proponents kasi we allow collaborative, no? And then abstract, and then introduction, keywords. So ito yung ating template na may logo, may ganyan. Ayan. Tapos introduction, method, results, discussion, acknowledgement, and others. No? You can have conclusion, recommendation, acknowledgement, and then references. So ito yung ating pinaka-template. No? So this is work in progress. Okay? So what differentiates is the one that we submitted for our task number 1. Yung task number 1 natin is the scaffold, no? So ito naman yung samples ng ating task number 1 which I presented last meeting together with the other those who have submitted, no? So it's the 1 page na nandun yung research topic, research problem, purpose, research questions, deficiencies in evidence, and then relating the study to the audience. So ito yung ating task number 1, no? The scaffold. Now, others are saying na nag-update po ako ng aking task 1 kasi may mga changes sa gusto nilang gawin. So walang problema as long as everything is submitted here in our Google Classroom. I discourage those who sent email kasi sa email talaga mawawala siya, no? Kasi I have been receiving a lot every day. So mami-misplay siya. While if you have this in the classroom, no problem, no? Talagang makikita natin dito pag nasubmit sa classroom. So ito yung sample ng task number 1, no? Yung mga hindi pa nakapag-submit. Okay? So what we are after here is the plan of your research, no? Kasi ito yung pinakaplano ng lahat, no? Kasi kompleto to eh. Nandito yung gusto mong problema, ano ang dahilan, ano yung mga tanong mo, ano yung gap, no? Yung research gap, no? Na gusto mong i-fill in, no? Para ito ang magiging contribution mo. Tapos para kanino? So sino ang audience, no? Sino ang makinabang doon sa research na gagawin. So ito yung ating task number 1. Okay? And then I have given some examples here doon sa mga corrections, no, or sa mga comments, no, para makita naman na ano yung mga comparison, no, para to better off our research. Ayan. Okay? So just like this one, no? So these are cues, no, which can help us to make our task 1 better. Okay? So sila yung ginawa nating basihan, no? Yung mga last group. Okay, for example, ito, gusto MBA kasi ito siya, no? So market acceptability with regards to the Bayanihan Act being implemented through banks. So my comments there, so which I think you need to observe, no? So yung market acceptability, so that is a variable. If you can find that term, no, na mayroon talaga siyang basihan, no, na gamit siya, no, in other researches, the word is market acceptability. So if you can define that, then no problem. So that becomes a variable. Okay. And then Bayanihan Act. So meron naman tayong Bayanihan Act, no, na ginawa ng Pilipinas, no, which is already a law. So I just wrote it here, what specific provision, no, in the Bayanihan Act, because that's too heavy, no, to study all, no. So you make sure na saang parte doon, no, saang provision, no, dun sa Bayanihan Act. And then bank is also very broad, no. So is it a commercial bank? Is it a government? So what kind of bank, no, which we're talking about, no? So market acceptability, another variable is the Bayanihan Act. And then the focal point is the bank, no? So ano bang klaseng bangko? Okay. Now, is it helpful to the general public? So I think it is broad, no? So we have to specify. I think we're looking at the borrowers, no? Yung borrower ba ang, kasi ang sinabi dito, clients who currently have loans. So talagang borrowers ang tinutukoy, no? So be specific. So yung Bayanihan Act ba na provision, no, na magbibigay ng mga short-term loans kaya dun sa mga entrepreneurs or negosyante. So paano siya makakatulong, no, dun sa borrowers? I think borrowers ang tinutukoy na kasi nakita dito eh. So what is the difference of the effect of Bayanihan Act from the different classification of people? So this is another variable, no? Another thesis kasi you're looking at another group of clients, no? So you have to be careful. Okay, so what does it mean? Okay, will the act still be helpful after the pandemic? So maybe your data instrument can answer that, no? So make sure. So what are we going to do tonight is to make sure that our SOPs, no? So yung problema na binigay natin, mabibigyan natin ng sagot, no? So yun ang gagawin natin ngayong gabi, no? So the task number 1, the problems which we have identified, the variables which we have considered, they all be defined, they all be explained, no? As we prepare our task number 2. So yun ang ating titignan ngayong gabi. Okay? So okay, so that is what we're going to do tonight, no? Okay, so last meeting we had our discussion on this one, no? Everything about our module 1, no? So we look into the nuances of research, and then we go down to the why we need the problem, no? Where our interest on research coming from. So we had that, no, in our module discussion 1, and how to at least, no, narrow down our topic into specific, no? And it becomes a study variable. So ginawa natin 'yon. And then we also look into the related literature. Okay, and we also look into the ethical points of research, no? So we always protect our respondents. We always keep our data sacred, no? In some other thesis, there is always the consent, no, of the data and the researcher that at a particular time they have to garbage the data. Ibig sabihin, you have to put the trash, no, yung data na para mawala siya, no, para hindi siya kumalat, no, kasi that was only used for your study, no. So it's either you have to return it or you have to trash it. Okay, so may ganong consent. And we also look at the impartiality of our results. We also make sure that it remains objective. Our respondents will be treated with utmost confidentiality. So yun ang sinabi natin. And then we offered the samples, no, of our task number 2. Okay, so yung task number 2 natin, which is focused on the literature. So we had some examples here, no. Ito yung sinabi natin last meeting, no. These are examples of publication. So pag nakita mo sa mga published, no, journals, yung kanilang format, no, on reporting, kasi IMRAD is the reporting format, no, of use in publications. So they have introduction, methodology, analysis, then results, and then discussion. So IMRAD. And then we had 2 examples, no? So this one and then the other one. So if you notice, nandito pa rin siya, no? Yung abstract, yung proponents, yung title, and then the keywords are important, no? So this will be typed in by the journal publication, meaning to say that if you Google or if you search these keywords, makasama ka doon, no? Makasama yung inyong papel, no? Kasi ito yung mga keywords na ginamit. Okay. So we have here an introduction. This journal, this one is the Journal of Research in Education Sciences. Talagang ni-require na maglagay ka ng related literature. So related literature will always be based on variable. So since our study is about perceived demand ng senior high, mixed method, and then this is national education reform, the K-12, using the theoretical foundation. No? Ito yung theory niya, framework, yung micro-level novel obligations. So ito yung tinest na theory, no? Using the mixed method. No? So ito yung mga variables. So pagdating dito sa task number 2 mo, i-define mo. No? So perceived demand. So i-define mo yung ano ba yung ibig sabihin niya, no? Kasi yun ang title mo. No? So micro-level effects of social change. Yan. Senior high school amid the Philippines K-12 education reform. And then make use of the related literature, studies and literature. So ini-expect natin na dito magdi-define tayo ng mga terms, no? Doon sa variable na ginagamit natin, study variable. Okay. So we have the study, kasi mixed method. So study 1, which is on the quantitative, kasi nga mixed method ang ginamit. So study 1 is the quantitative. No? So nandito ang method, no? Nandito ang instrument, okay. Nandito ang results. And then study 2 is on the qualitative. No? Kasi nga mixed method siya. So ito yung study 2. Yan. Nandito din ang participants, data gathering. Kasi nga iba siya, no? Quali siya eh. So pagdating sa results, nagkaiba ang presentation. This one is more on the narratives, no? So talagang ayan. Now, how do we keep the confidentiality? So naglagay kami ng ano yun, Hope School Green. So may mga coding, no? So mayroong mga coding ito yung si Hope sa school na green, si Al school na blue. So maraming groups ang na-involved, no, doon sa focus group discussion. Pagdating dito sa presentation, we use the coding, no? So we don't use the real name. Kasi nga confidentiality, no, yung mga nag-participate. So you can make use of the aliases, no, or pseudonyms, no, to code yung mga responses. Fred, school red, ganyan. So merong mga coding. So ito yung theme, no? Ito yung results, no? Ito yung area na inimbestigahan ng focus group. So anong masasabi nila dito, no? Ito yung mga theme na lumabas. And then different characteristic ng students. Okay. And then new relationship with peers, administrators. Lumabas din siya, no? So anong sinabi nila? And then new curricular content. And then adjustment in instruction or pedagogy. And then concerns about teaching load. So yan. So puro narratives, no? Kasi nga ito ay qualitative. And then change in salary. So these are the main points, no? And then general discussion. So after you present your results, then you now discuss. So in the discussion part, you go back again to the citation of your references, no? Yung related literature ano naman, no? So samahan mo na siya dito, no? I-incorporate mo na yung is your study conforming? Is your study otherwise, no? Not, no? Doon sa ibang nagawa, no? Or na present, no, na related literature. So this will either vouch or either anong tawag dito? Nagba-vouch ba ang ibang study sa result mo or hindi, no? So ito ay parte ng analysis, no, doon sa discussion. And dito i-justify mo yung research gap, no? So ipapakita mo na dito na bakit importante or relevant yung study mo kasi ito yung lumabas kaiba or dun sa iba na sinabi, nagko-conform siya. No? Kasi we mentioned in our first meeting, research will have to be retested, re-verified. No? So we keep on validating previous results, no? Previous researches. And then after that, acknowledgement and then references. So ito yung isa sa sample, no? Ng isang journal, paano tayo magsasubmit. So parang later on, pwede na tayo dito siguro mag-apply. No? Journal of Research in Education Sciences. Okay? And ito ay another, I think this is another one. No? So another style naman ng journal. Ito ay Journal of Research Policy and Practice of Teachers and Teacher Education. So ito naman ang kanyang style. No? So IMRAD pa rin. So title is here. So Senior High School Continuing Profession Education, Job-Related Attitude Exploring the Effects of Perceived Demand. So still K-12. So may abstract pa rin, may proponents, may keywords, introduction, and still there is definition of variables. No? So i-define pa rin ang variables. So in the actual thesis manuscript, ito yung parang ito na yung chapter 2, no? So sinama mo na dito, no? You already put chapter 2 here in the introduction. Chapter 2 usually talks about the variables, no? So ito na yon, no? And then supporting studies and literature, and then another variable which is on the professional development, no? Okay. And then after that, okay, so after your introduction, then you proceed to your methodology. So ito yung pag-uusapan natin ngayon, yung methodology. So methodology looks into the research design. Okay, so ito yung mga subtitles na importante, no? Ano ba ang design ng research? Sino ang participants? Okay? Now, itong table 1, okay, in the normal research or normal thesis, itong table 1, ito yung tinatanong natin na what are the demographic profile, no, of the respondents, no? So, ito na yung instead na ipipresent doon, pwede na siyang ilagay dito sa under participants kasi tapos naman ang research. So, you are now reporting. So, when you propose a thesis or a research, yung participants mo are simply sila po ay pinili ng ganito. Now, since natapos na ang research, pwede mo nang i-describe kung sino sila, no? Kasi you are now reporting your output. So yung sinabi mo na 289, sino yon? So ito na yung mga characteristics nila, no? Ayan. So galing na to sa actual na data. So pwede na siyang ilagay dito instead of as a result, no? Kasi hindi naman tinanong doon na ano ang kanilang profile, no? So pwede na siyang ilagay dito to supplement, no, na ito yung kanilang mga characteristics ng participants. And then we have the research instruments. So another important na subtitle, ano yung mga ginamit mo ng mga instruments, no? So in this case, lahat naman ng instrument na ginamit namin ay galing na sa research ng iba, no? Yung perceived demand, kinuha namin kay Tomasic. No? Yung financial threat scale, kinuha namin kay Marjanovic. Yung attitude, Ratches, no? Kinuha namin kay Blunt. Okay? Yung participation. So these are all data, no? Na meron tong scale. Yung 1 to 5, ito, yung not at all, a great deal. So ito yung mga responses. Ito naman 1 to 7, does not apply at all, fully applies. So ito yung ranges, no, ng responses. Ayan. Sorry. So pwede mo siyang gamitin. Okay. So after that, sorry. So research instrument, and then results and discussion na. So ano yung results na nakuha mo base doon sa mga problem statement, no? Yung problem na pinorward mo. So dito mo na i-explain yung results based on the data that you have gathered. Ayan. And then after that, you can have additional subtitles, conclusions, recommendations. You can have limitations of the study. And then you can also have implications. Okay. And then you can have acknowledgement and then references. So ito yung buod ng IMRAD. No? Presentation ng output. Okay. So I have here 2 examples. So I have also, we also have here, no? So ito na yung mga sinubmit ng ating mga classmates. Ayan. Di ba ang ganda, no? So meron na silang nagawang skeletal. So immigration policy, no? Issuance of specified skilled workers visa to Filipino workers. So ito na yung kanyang skeletal. Introduction. Okay. Ayan. And then methodology. And then the working references. No? So this is ongoing references. Dadami pa yan. Okay. So ito yung samples natin ng task number 2. Okay, so I think my observations, siguro dito mag-subtitle, no? I-define yung ito. Importante kasing ma-define to, no? Ano ba ang Japan's immigration policy na gusto mong imbestigahan, no? And then what is this skilled workers? So I think you need a subtitle there, no? Dedicated, no? Committed. So dedicated lang dun sa variable para maintindihan ng reader ano bang ibig sabihin ng variable na yon, no, na nasa title. Okay, another one, no, interplay of school welfare, provision, and teachers' performance. So I hope you can follow the prescribed template, Jaime, no? So meron tayong prescribed na template. So and then introduction. You don't need to follow yung regular thesis natin. IMRAD, you just have to do the reporting, no? Dun sa ating template. Okay. Yan. So ginamitan niya ng related literature. Ito na yung subtitle, teacher's performance. So yan. Pasok na dyan lahat. Okay? Ayan, social welfare provision. So meron ng mga related lit. Research design. Oh. So this is a mixed research. Wow. And then respondents, and then local. Okay. Sampling. Instrument. Meron pa siyang validity. Treatment. So references. Okay? So I think ang observation ko lang dito kay Jaime, usually pag gumagamit tayo ng research, hindi naman siya historical approach design, no? We have to be observant on our use of related literature and studies, no? If these are theories or if these are fundamental description, no, of theories, there is no problem that we always go back as old as Karl Marx, no, or Karl Marx concept of functionalism, no, yung yun ang theory, no. So wala tayong problema doon kung pupunta tayo sa Das Kapital ni Karl Marx, no, na 1700s. But if we are looking at studies, okay, so I hope that you can choose studies, no? Kasi ang studies, pag sa journal, pag sa study, usually dapat ang life niya 5 years, no? So we choose the study latest to 5 years. So since 2021 na tayo ngayon, so dapat ang ating related studies ay nasa 2017. Okay? So yun ang tinitignan, no? Now, ibig sabihin, yung 5-year, no? Yung 5-year na citation, no? Na gagamitin natin siya dun sa ating study. Bakit 5 years? Kasi there could be a lot of changes after that, no? Ibig sabihin, yung study mo ngayon, let's say about performance of students, and yet your point of preference, no, is 2008. So parang ang layo na ng 2008 sa 2021. So marami ng studies na nagawa, no, na pwedeng magbago na ang norm, no? Nagbago na ang construct, no, yung knowledge about that particular variable. So kaya ang tinitignan palagi is ang related studies dapat 5 years, no? So kung 2021 tayo, dapat 2017, no? Unless if these are laws, theories, okay, related literature that we really have to go back to the books, no, when they are published. But if we look at the studies, no, yung talagang research na gagamitin natin as point of justification, then it has to be 5 years. Okay? So I think yun ang magiging comment doon, no, sa submission, no, yung nakita natin ngayon. Okay? So kung titignan mo, meron siyang kung study to, halimbawa 2007, 2000 yan, 15, 11, 12, 2008. Yan. So just be cautious, no? Okay? Kung ano ba siya, no? Is this a literature or a study? So if that is a study, make sure nasa 5 years, no? Yung latest, no? Para igawin mo siya as a justification. Because yun nga ang sinabi, maybe marami ng nag-research na prior to that, no? Nag-iba na yung no, na ang variable. Kasi masyado na siyang matagal, no? So meron pang mga earlier, latest to that. Okay? So another one, ito naman ay group, no? Collaborative ang kanilang submission. So my introduction. Okay? So I think they will add some more here on the description of the variable. So ocular findings in patients diagnosed with lymphoma in a tertiary hospital. So sa inyo trivial, no? It's trivial to define tertiary, but to the readers, what is a tertiary hospital, no? So what is lymphoma? So maybe you can do that, no? Or even the words ocular findings, no? So maybe you can have that defined in the introduction, so that the readers may really know. Baka dyan maraming mga related literature and studies, no, that look into what is this and what is that another variable. Okay? So that should be part of the introduction. Okay. So it separates, no? Yun ang konsepto ng related literature, di ba? It separates and emphasize your variable, your study variable. So nagkakaroon siya ng operational na definition and how it is relevant to your study. Kung isa-separate mo siyang i-discuss, so mas nagkakaroon siya ng significant, no? Para maintindihan ng reader ano bang ibig sabihin mo ng variable na ito. So these are all implied, no, dito sa ginagawa nating title. Okay? Ayan. So ito may abstract na, no? So meron na siyang skeletal for the abstract, keywords, introduction, and then ayan, may related study siya, literature. Ayan. And then design. Okay. So paunti-unti, no? Meron ng laman ang ating IMRAD. Okay, and then references. So these are examples, no? These are examples found or that I have looked into, no, your submission. Okay. So no problem, just continue. We have samples in our samples identified, no, to guide us in our Google Classroom. So ito yung para sa task number 2. Okay? So makagawa na tayo ng ating skeletal, no, paunti-unti. And I think we also mentioned in our last 2 meetings, no, na ang ating gagawin sa klase na ito ay isang pilot study. No? So we don't really intend to have it the full-blown. We would like only to test waters on how we can be able to go through a scientific inquiry. So pilot study meaning to say partial of it, or meaning to say just portion of that population which you intend to. Okay? Kasi nga ang ating time frame is hanggang January lang, no, or December to be strict, no, dun sa ating time frame, no, para magkaroon tayo ng grade, no, sa subject. So ang negotiation natin last time was simply to have a pilot test, no, following a scientific process para mas ma-appreciate natin later. Kasi meron naman tayong thesis 1 at saka project 1 after our class. After this semester, this will be now put more, no, when you will enroll in the thesis 1 or project 1. So mas lalawak pa to, no? So ngayon dito, as I have mentioned, instead of doing all the theories and lecture, why not we practice, no? So how can we go about presenting our own output, no, in such a way that we understand the different areas of research. Okay? So yun lang naman ang ating wish, no? Kaya nag-identify tayo dito ng 4 na tasks. Ito naman ang ating requirements for this course. So meron tayong research scaffold, yung task 1. Tapos meron tayong paunting skeletal ng task 2, giving emphasis to our literature and studies. Okay? And then our task number 3, which is on methodology, and then our assigned instrument, and then that's the time that we can have all of them, no, in task number 4. Okay, so task number 3, before we go into that, do we have questions for task number 2? Lalo na dun sa iba na hindi pa nakapag-submit.
Yes po.
Anong question? Yes, go ahead. May question? So please make it a habit dito lang ilalagay, no? Dito lang ilalagay ang ililink lang naman yan eh. So what you can do is you send it, no, sa drive nyo, tapos kukunin nyo yung link, ito yung isasubmit nyo dito, no, para nakalink lang siya. Okay? Para ganito ang ating submission, no. So once I open, nakikita agad, no? Kasi pag naka-email siya attachment, talagang it will be missed out there kasi ang daming messages araw-araw sa email. Yeah, we have to include methodology, no? Okay? Okay. Methodology is already part of our discussion. We will have it more tonight, no? So, titignan natin yung methodology. Para yung iba makahabol dun sa submission. Okay, it's here. Ay, sorry. Nasa 3 pala. Sorry. Ayan. Okay, this is now the methodology, no? This is for task. Actually, it's task number 3 because it gears towards the entire matrix, no, of how you will be able to process your statement of the problem. Kasi meron ka ng problema, nakahanap ka na ng mga justification sa literature at saka sa studies ng iba, and then ngayon ipaprocess mo na into an approach, no? We call it the method. So it talks about first the approach that you're going to use. So approach, or the first step, no, which is the design, is important because everything else will fall under, no, on based on what design that you will have. So importante sa method, makikita yung design, no. It is usually who, what, where, when, no? Yung basic na question natin. Bakit, paano, no? Sino? So yun ang ating method. Okay, so when we talk about the methods of research, no, these are actually taken, no, from what kind of questions that you forwarded will already explain what method do you want, no? Kaya minsan chine-check, no, wag mo nang itanong to kasi itong tanong na to talagang experimental lang ang pwedeng gumawa, no. So you will be confined to a method that you have to use experiment because based on what you ask, no? So our manner of questioning or statement of the problem will also give us, no, what method that we are going to employ. So first, in the scaffold, no, yung task number 1, nakikita na natin dun yung mga tanong natin. Ano bang gusto natin? So I think to preempt, no, I think most of us are here in the descriptive method. In the descriptive method. Okay, so historical method or historical research, usually, no, ito yung mga nasa social science, no? Okay, na talagang we have to go back to the sources of the data, no, the artifacts, no, the evidence, no, na magpapatunay doon sa hypothesis, no, na sinasabi. Okay, so historical approach, so we go back, no? Kaya in the real world, hindi natin dinidemolish or dinadamage yung mga artifacts, no, or other evidence of history because these are important in the research and development area, no. So one of that, no, na nakikinabang yung historical approach na gagawin, no, ng isang researcher. So kaya babalikan niya ang baol kung anong mga nakasulat doon. And I think the most crucial here is that the sources of information, are they really authentic? So yun ang importante doon. So ano ba ang source? Okay, that's historical approach. You can have content analysis, no, okay, for example, on the previous presidents, ano ang kanilang stand to this kind of thing, no? So you always go back to the old documents that are authentic so that it can present an objective analysis. So importante sa historical approach yung sources of information. And these are validated, no? These are sources of validation on the implication of contemporary, kung ano tayo ngayon, no? So we always connect that, of course, no? Ano ba ang nangyari dati, no? At saka ano ang kanyang implication ngayon, no? So yun naman always ang sinasabi or ang ina-assume, no, sa historical approach. Okay. So again, no, ang importante dito yung sources talaga, no? So saan tayo kukuha, no, ng ating ebidensya, no, sa nakaraan. Okay? So it facilitates our understanding of when, how, and why past events occurred and the significance of these events to libraries as collectors, organizers, and disseminators of the products of humanities, intellects, and emotions. Okay. So yung mga nasiuna, no? Okay. So yun ang tinitignan natin. So exposing data in the past, no? And how is this significant? Okay, so we have here sources of historical data. So importante, no, yung primary sources. We still have to validate, no, yung data. So there is still validation on the authenticity of the data. Okay. So I think we already have had some problems, no? Yung mga nangyayari, no? Yung mga hoax, no, na hindi pala totoo but sinabi, no? So importante, no? Importante yung mabalikan. Yun ang contribution, no, ng historical research approach. Okay.
Alam na naka-off ang camera niya.
Okay.
Might please.
Ayan.
Sir Mark,
Yes.
may nakuha pong camera. Pag i-close ka mo, may...
Which
Sir
one?
Mark, meron po kasing may camera kasi na kitang-kita, Hindi ko alam kung paano sasabihin. Nakuha yung camera.
Okay.
Oo. Yan na lang.
Pa-off na lang. Pwede naman tayong wala mo ng camera. Okay? Yan. Okay. Where are we now? Okay, here. Okay, so writing of history, no? So historical compositions or writing of history is a synthetic, no, and constructive process which causes problems. So the problem of documentation, yun ang manang problema doon, no? The logical problem as it involves the question of relative importance of the various items and topics. The philosophical and artistic problem, because every historian injects his own interpretation of what he presents. Okay, so these are some of the limitations, no? And I think to some, no, masyadong expensive kasi you have to really go back, no? You really have to go back to the roots, and some of which are not anymore existing. So yun ang isa sa mga limitation, no, ng historical approach. Okay. So again, at the end, the successful writer must know the historical value and significance of each topic. So a very good historical perspective is needed para dito sa historical approach. Okay, as mentioned, more on descriptive method tayo, no? So descriptive is the what now, no? So we're looking at the now, no? It describes systematically the facts and characteristics of a given population area or interest factually, no, and accurately. It gathers information about the present existing conditions and describes the nature of the situation as it exists at the time of the study. In short, a descriptive study determines and reports the way things are. So this is really the now. So this is the descriptive. So we identify a certain setting, population, representative sampling, or the sample size, the sample representation of a population, and then we get their narratives, no? Or their level of understanding to a certain phenomenon, and then describe it, how it is, no? So this is more of the objective, the factual, and the accurate, no? Because these are existing, the things that we have right now, no, at the moment. So we use the descriptive, no, approach. So it includes studies, no, and then concerns on the status of anything, a group, person, number of objects, conditions. Okay, so we can make use of a panel data. Okay, so panel data is the set of data from years, no, of comparatively, no, lalo na sa halimbawa sa economics, no, yung mga ganyan, no. So 10-year data, national statistics, and then we make some little estimation and projection. So these are done, no, in the descriptive analysis. Okay, the advantage usually, no, it's more on the educational research, which are very good action research, no? The variables, no, that are controlled, that can be controlled, no? So ito ay magiging advantage, no, dun sa gumagawa, no, under this approach. Okay, observation, lived experiences, ayan. Data collection will be spread over a large number of people over a large geographic area. Okay, so those are advantages of descriptive research. So what are those types of descriptive research? So ito yung ilalagay mo doon, no? Ito yung kadalasan nakikita natin sa research na the study is a descriptive correlational study. So it is a descriptive correlational, descriptive case analysis, no? Descriptive survey, developmental follow-up study, descriptive documentary or content analysis, descriptive trend studies. So these are classifications, no? Classifications of a descriptive approach. Okay, so case study is much on confined, no, with a particular group or individuals or institution that goes into an in-depth investigation over a considerable, no, as identified, no, period of time. Okay, so it becomes a descriptive case study. So it focuses, no, the dynamics, no, to determine the dynamics of why the subject thinks, behaves, develops, no, in a particular manner. So magiging case study siya, no? Case study. So it is a descriptive case study. Okay. Descriptive survey. Okay. So this usually employs a data information, no, with study variables at hand to measure, no, okay, to measure a phenomenon without looking into the why, no? So just simply describing. Okay? Kasi pag why exploratory, no, it becomes qualitative in nature. Okay? So it's just simply looking at a certain conditions, no, involved with a certain phenomenon or variables. Okay. Developmental study. Okay, developmental study is more on progression, no, along number of dimensions. So developmental is focused, no, on descriptive developmental. So it could more or less, no, look into the different facets, no, of human or social problems. So emotional, physical, social development. It illustrates one, if you want to get reliable information about the similarities and differences of children at various ages. So you may make a developmental study. Such design will require a considerable period of time in studying the psychological, intellectual, and emotional growth of children. Okay, so developmental more on longitudinal, no? So there will be a series of time, no, that is allotted to gather the data, and well, talagang longer, no? And if there are interventions along the way or treatment, then that's the more or less related now to longitudinal studies, no? So developmental. Ano ang halimbawa after 3 months another intervention, after 3 months another intervention, so para titingnan mo yung effect, no? So it becomes longitudinal. So developmental. Okay. Okay, so we also have follow-up studies. So another descriptive, no? It's a follow-up studies. For example, a researcher may be interested to find out how the NSDB graduates, for example, fared after graduation, or to find out how the Fulbright scholars in the country are doing. Okay, so these are follow-up studies, no? So after something that has been completed or achieved, then you want to look into what happens next, no? So these are milestone in terms of the conditions of the participant at a given time. So ang tawag natin dun sa ano is condition or treatment. Okay? So if we want to take a look at the alumni of MM Collab Group. So yung first batch natin, pag nag-graduate na sila, so if this is considered a condition of a graduate program under blended education, then let's take a look at what happens after. So those graduates, in the blended platform, so that could be a follow-up studies. Okay. So ang condition is ito ngayon, itong nangyari sa atin ngayon. Okay, documentary or content analysis. So maraming gumagamit nito. I think if you have seen some of the studies, no, na published sa journal, maraming gumagamit nito, no. More on the metaphysics, no? So it's looking at the content. For example, I think may nag-study about ano yung construct, no, ng or the meaning, contextual meaning. Pag yung sinasabi ni President Duterte na PI, no? 'Di ba palagi niyang sinasabi yung PI. So saan ba niya ginagamit? Bakit ba niya ginagamit? Sa anong pagkakataon? So yun ang study, no? So it's content analysis. So tinignan lahat ng recordings, no? Yung speeches ng president. Lahat ng engagement niya, no, na nagsasalita siya tapos na-utter niya yung PI, yung word. So bakit ba niya nagamit yun? Bakit ba nabigkas yun? No? So it becomes a content analysis. So we make use of written materials, no, or other forms of communication where we can look at we can analyze a phenomenon. Okay? Or we can have, for example, a series of paintings by a person para makita natin ano ba ang kanyang subject, ano ang kanyang theme, no, dun sa lahat ng ginawa niya. So that becomes another content analysis, no? So it's a documentary or content analysis. Now we can even have, for example, no, series of studies on parang literature review, no? So series of studies conducted on COVID-19. And then from there, we can analyze, we can describe the phenomenon out of the different journals published or essays published or put into public, no, consumption. So pwede nating imbestigahan, no, ang phenomenon base doon sa mga na-publish na mga papel, no, para maintindihan natin, ito pala. Okay? So pwedeng ganon. I think may gumawa nito, no, yung isang major ko na history. So yung kay sino ba yung president daw na si Quezon, no? No. Si parang puppet president, parang ganon. So para ma-prove niya, history major siya at the same time. So go back, no? Go back to the papers, no? To the sources of communication, mga books na para i-justify bakit siya nagiging puppet president. Okay? So pwedeng gawin 'yon. No? So it becomes a content analysis. Okay? Jose P. Laurel. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so content analysis. Pwede mong gamitin 'yan, no? Part ng descriptive. So descriptive content analysis, descriptive documentary, descriptive follow-up. Okay. Okay, it is a descriptive trend analysis. So seeking the behavior of variables in the future, and its primary purpose is to project the results in the future. Correlational. This is also very common. No? Looking at extent how the variables go with each other. Okay, so it's correlational study, descriptive correlational. Okay, the x and the y variables. So how the x and the y behave. No? So certain degree of relationship certain degree of significance, no, in terms of the point of estimate, no, dun sa kanyang variables. So it could be cross-examined with demographics. No? So meron kang halimbawa anxiety, for example, anxiety, cross-examine that to age group, okay? Or occupational anxiety na sinasabi nila, no? I-cross-examine mo doon sa income range, no? Or i-cross-examine mo doon sa type or classification of employment, or even sa classification ng age, no? Kasi hindi na yung tinitingnan dito yung newly hired, tapos yung middle, tapos yung pa-retire na. So baka doon sa mga grupo na yon magkakaroon ka ng magandang norm, no? Magandang na description ng variable na saan ba talaga ang anxiety mas lalong nagiging evident, no? So sa anong parte ng edad, ng classification ng manggagawa. So this is a correlational study. So you cross-examine. Usually it's looking at the demographics, no? So i-cross-section mo yung isang variable dun sa demographics. So correlational, this is used. And then we have experimental method. So experimental method, I think sa management naman tayo na area. So wala naman siguro ditong magpapa-observe, no, na ilalagay sa isang classroom tapos titignan or magwa-watch ng movie as an intervention tapos titignan anong effect ng kanilang emotion. So those are experimental. So it's purely more on observation. So we put the people or population or sample in a certain stimulus, no, or in a certain condition, and see how is this affecting their certain level of behavior. So may treatment na magaganap, no? So yung design na to kailangan ng treatment, yung intervention. But for those in the education, you can make use of this, no? Meron tayong quasi-experimental. So ito yon. So experimental really is more on the cause and effect. So tinitignan natin yung cause and effect. From the treatment, what happens? No? So what brings about change of the independent variable? No? Pag na-observe na natin yung epekto. Okay? And in the social science or in the education area, okay, pag experimental pure talaga, kailangan talaga yung validity, no? It's very important, no? Kasi hindi pwedeng gamitin yung mga tao usually, no? Tapos longer time, baka fatigue or what, no? Hindi na maganda ang result. So kailangan talaga very accurate yung intervention, yung treatment. And there is so much in terms of their ethical standards, no? So paano natin sila maalagaan? Kasi gagamitin natin sila as part of the treatment, no? Okay? But there are, okay, we have to control the extraneous variables, no? Yung mga hindi na natin kayang ma-explain, no? Outside of us. So kailangan nating i-minimize. Meron tayong mga ganitong design. So ito yung design na talagang may treatment tapos post-test. So this is the pure, no? Magkakaroon ka ng treatment tapos titignan mo yung epekto. Okay? Meron ding kunin mo muna yung kanyang pre-test ano yung kanyang level nung hindi pa nagkaroon ng treatment. Tapos after that, yung post-test. Then i-compare mo. Okay. So i-compare mo yung results ng pre-test to post-test. So you can validate that the X, which is the treatment or the intervention, is effective. So ito yung O1X, O2. Now, there is mentioned earlier, no, yung quasi-experimental. So ito yung quasi-experimental. So you will form two groups. Okay? The group 1, no? For example, experimental. The group 2 is control group. Okay? So there is pre-test, there is experiment, and then there is post-test. So the O and the X, no? So this is the test, the treatment, and then another test. So pre-test, treatment, and post-test. There could be time series, yung sinabi ko kanina, no? So a lot of treatment along the way, and how is this affecting? So series of experimental treatment. So time series design, no? Experiment. Okay. Ito yung kanina, ito yung ginawa ko. I had my EDUC, no? EDUC masters. So I used this experimental group and control group. Okay. So the experimental group receives the treatment. The control group did not. And then there is pre-test, there is post-test, and then just trying to analyze if the X, no, received by the experimental is effective towards a variable. No? So ito yung ginamit ko in my masters. No? Ito yung pre-test, post-test control group design. Okay, my research, my thesis is all about the one I mentioned last meeting. So it's an pedagogy. So it's instruction. No? So I use the structured instructional material that I design as an intervention as the X. So ginamit ko yon, nag-identify ako ng mga subject areas sa area ng economics. No? Tapos ginawa ko siyang SIM, yung module. Okay? So, and then nag-identify ako ng mga classroom na ginawa kong experimental, yung isa naman ginawa kong control group. So, yung experimental group, sila yung gumamit ng SIM. So, nag-pre-test muna, no? So, pag nag-pre-test ang dalawang group, tapos minatch ko yung mga same score. So yung pre-test is the exam, no? Ito yung i-measure mo doon sa ginawa mong treatment. No? So since this is more on education, so yung treatment ko is yung methodology, yung pedagogy ng learning, no? Which is the structural material. So lahat ng areas doon, in-exam ko muna sila, pre-test. So hindi pa nila nasubukan yung topics, pina-exam, no? Just to get the matching of their scores. So halimbawa, that was 75 items. So halimbawa, sa 75 items, 18 ang nakuha ng isa. Meron din sa isa 18. So sila ang match. So sila 18 ang score. Yung isa naman 25. Hanap ka dun sa isang group 25. So out of the entire class na 50, I only was able to match 32. So yun lang ang babantayan mo, yung na-identified mo na nagma-match. Okay? So sila yung hindi mo sasabihin sa kanila kasi this is nga experimental. So but you identified already sino yung nasa class na titignan mo, i-measure mo after. So experimental group, meron na silang module. So gumamit sila ng module. So this is about series of 4 months. Kasi 4 months ang topic. No? Yung mga midterm na topic, yung entire midterm. And then after natapos lahat ng topics, i-exam mo sila uli. So same questions yung pre-test. So ngayon, tumaas na ang kanilang score. No? Hindi na sila 16. Umabot na sila ng 50, 40 plus, 60. And then, you will now get the inferential analysis. So iti-test mo na sila ngayon using the significance of the t-test na meron bang epekto sa kanilang, is there a significant difference yung sa kanilang score ng experimental at saka ng control group. So kung meron, ibig sabihin effective yung treatment. Kasi hindi siya parehas dun sa control group. Okay? So napatunayan ko yun dun sa ginawa kong experiment. Quasi, ito yung pre-test, post-test. And then, dun sa attitude, wala akong napatunayan na significance. So I think that is perfectly okay. So yung attitude nila, may questionnaire din yun. Yung attitude nila towards the subject, walang significant difference. So whether experimental group or control group, naniniwala sila na maganda ang subject. Okay ang subject. Okay? So yun ang attitude. Pero pagdating dun sa performance nila, may difference sa gumamit ng treatment, yung SIM. So, yan lang. Yan ang ginawang methodology sa pag-analyze. So I use this, the pre-test, post-test control group. Okay? So iba-iba naman 'to mga design. Ayan. So this is on experimental. Okay, and then we have case and feasibility studies. So for management, this is usually what happens for management. So we use the case and feasibility, and then we can employ the approach of STRAMA, strategic management in the reporting. May sarili din siyang presentation, but more or less it's the confined analysis of a certain phenomenon or a certain setting, which gives us more of the depth on the areas that are forwarded to explain. Okay, so we use the case feasibility. So how doable a certain approach is. So we would like to investigate and divulge areas that are very crucial to implement something. Kaya meron tayong feasibility studies. Okay. So that could be still part of a method. So we define a problem, we set the objectives, and then there are considerations, and then we have courses of actions, and then we come up into a conclusion. And then we have project feasibility. So it could be on the marketing. We could talk about the management aspects. Okay, our next itong sa mga non-thesis, usually yung approach magiging more on the project approach, magiging more on the program approach ang inyong presentation. It's more on the utilization of the cycles of management para mai-present nyo doon. Less of data collection, less of respondents. It's more on the management cycle or the management cycle of a program or of a feasibility plan. So yun ang magiging approach dun sa project program development. So titignan dun yung deliverables, yung technical, financial, project plan, mission, objectives. Titignan dun yung scheduling, and then completion, feedback, evaluation. So more on the strama, no? Strategic, okay, process. So yun ang magiging format, no? Pagdating natin doon sa non-thesis. Okay. So you will have that next semester. But for our class, we wanted to have a data gathering, a simple data gathering. And then some students are asking, anong difference, sir? No, data gathering, the usual, no, descriptive, demographic, these are very good points to start with in the needs assessment. Diba? Hindi naman mabuo yung project kung hindi mo istadihan yung locality, no, na i-implement mo yung project mo. You still have to investigate, no? You still have to give needs assessment bago ka mag-PSID, no? My teacher before, I think familiar, no, pag sa UP siya, no? Matanda na siya at my time, no? Tapos sinishare niya palagi ang kanyang anecdote na malaki ang binibigay ni Henry C. Kasama siya dun sa working group, no, ni Henry C. Pag may bagong itatayo na SM, nagkakandak ng feasibility study. And then usually, nakikita nila, kasi they have to be very honest, kasi objective yan, feasible. No? Halimbawa daw, itong SM Santa Mesa. No? So, kaya sabi daw niya, ang laki ng budget ni Henry C, hindi naman siya nakinig sa result ng feasibility. So siguro para masatisfy lang siya na may research na nangyayari. Okay? Kasi ang nakita nila, for example sa Santa Mesa daw, at that time, no? Kasi talahib, no? Walang, kasi ang neighboring lang doon is San Juan. Ano pang neighboring? Yun lang ang neighboring doon eh, no? So, present nila na talagang hindi siya feasible for SM to be erected or magkakaroon ng SM at that area. Binayaran sila kasi feasibility. No? So that's a first step, no? To really collect the data, no? Para ma-plancha mo yung what courses of action that could be more appropriate. So you have to go again, no? Back to the basic, which is data collecting and analysis. Pero ang nangyari, the usual thing, kung ano yung result, put up pa rin si Henry C. So, ayan, naging successful naman ang SM Santa Mesa. Ayan, nandun na yung kanyang condominium and the rest, no? But it is part of analysis, no? Yung feasibility study. Always it is grounded with first set of research or data para mai-plancha mo yung other aspects, no? Ang presentation lang yung difference kasi you have to, yan, there is financial aspect, no? There is taxation aspect, technical aspect, ayan, social desirability. Papakita mo yan, no, as part of your presentation in the feasibility. Or they call it the STRAMA, strategic presentation. And then we also have the ethnography, some method, no? So this is really for some action research in social science, no? So you go to for example, no, indigenous people, and then you capture their narratives, no? Ano ba ang kanilang contextual, no, meaning sa wedding, sa chanting, no, yung kanilang mga chinachant, yung kanilang mga way of life, no? So lahat ng kanilang ginagawa, no? Ano ba ang tingin, ano ba ang message nun? So that's ethnography, no? So you write narratives, you describe the situation. So this is more fit on anthropology. So ethnography. So it practically employs the participative method or approach. So kailangan mong kailangan mong mag-immersion, no? Kailangan mong mag-stay doon. Okay? Wala kang sasabihin kung hindi mag-document ka na mag-document, no? Lahat, no? Lahat ng kanilang the normal na ginagawa nila. So yun ang skills na maiintindihan mo para ma-analyze mo, no? Yung kanilang konsepto, no? Yung meaning. Iba kasi ang meaning, no? Halimbawa yung wedding, yung pamamanhikan, yung mga ganon. So ano ba sa kanila yun? So you have to, make a lot, no, of participation to understand. And you cannot choreograph, no? It has to come naturally. You have to capture it, no, on a natural way. So hindi pwedeng magpapa-wedding ka para ano sila, no? Hintayin mo na may kasal, hintayin mo na may patay, hintayin mo na may yung mga rituals nila para ma-capture mo, no, yung execution at saka yung meaning, no, ng mga it's more on cultural description, yung way of life. So it's an up close, more personal approach. So yun ang ethnography. Yan. So naturalism, you have to understand, discover. Okay. Yeah, this is more on the field work. Yan ginagamit palagi sa mga sociologists, no? Field work. It demands more of the ethical, no, standards in the conduct. Okay, so ito yung mga ating methods, no, na pwedeng gamitin natin sa ating pagsaliksik. Okay. And as mentioned earlier, we are more on the descriptive at the moment. So with limited time, so pwede tayong maximize dito sa descriptive, no, method of doing the research. So we can have this, no, a case study, a survey, development approach, a follow-up, correlation, content analysis, trend studies. So yun ang pwede nating i-maximize, no, using our research question. Okay, and then we shall have the collection of data, no? How do we collect? Tools of research, okay? And then our statistics. So tools of research. So first we have data. So what data are we collecting? So we have our direct or empirical documentary data or secondary data. So we have documentary data. So these are all found, no, in the yearbook, no, Philippine yearbook or other panel data, no, na published na. No? So we can have those as part of our data to gather, no, for analysis. Kaya sinabi ko last meeting, hindi naman necessarily that you have to conduct an instrument, no? If these are already given in your workplaces, so no need to construct an instrument to get your data. There's no problem with that. No? Okay, so these are already given there. So the panel data can be used. No? So you just have to describe that, no, in your methodology. Empirical data, these are really data that we have to measure. So these are data coming from documentary data, no? But these are data that are already have been, no, part of the testing, no, na meron ng nagawa or gagawin natin, no, na galing sa isang set of inventory or sinasabi nating questionnaire, okay, or galing sa interview na gagawin natin, tapos iti-test natin, no? Using our problem statements, no? the variables that we mentioned, and we measure it. So these are empirical data. Okay, so we can make use of data collection, no, through questionnaire. So ito yung questionnaire. May mga advantages and disadvantages. These are guides to questionnaire construction. Okay. And then we also have interview. Questions should be relevant to most respondents. Avoid long, complicated items. Avoid negative items. Avoid bias items or leading questions. Do you agree or disagree with your teacher's view? Yan. Avoid questions that may in some way be psychologically threatening to the person answering. Sequence or arrange your questions properly. Give clear instructions. Always introduce, no, how and what to submit, no, as their answers. Okay. Always pre-test your questionnaire before using it in the study. So that's why we use test of reliability. So we measure consistency of our questions, no? And we also use validity. So we validate the format, the manner, the items. Prepare a letter of transmittal to the company. Choose appropriate format. Okay. Avoid complexities, no? Baka hindi na masagutan or yung iba tamad na. Questionnaire should be more or less daw, no? Less than 6 pages. Kasi pag maraming pages, baka hindi na sila aabot doon. Okay. And once you have a questionnaire fit into 1 page, no? Hindi yung ang instruction nasa second page, ang instruction nasa first page, tapos second page, balik na naman siya dun sa first page. Hirap-hirap yung mga sasagot. No? Ang tendency, check na lang sila ng check. So, kailangan importante pa rin yung format pag tayo ay nag-maximize ng questionnaire form. Okay, interview. We always look for the protocol. So make sure that we follow the protocol. So structured interview, unstructured interview. So it always goes with a protocol, no? Kasi doon sa protocol, at least meron ka ng mga tanong, probing, no? Mga questions na handa ka, no? Para itanong. Okay? Kung focus group naman yan, it's more on the sharing. No? You can ask participants, no, to freely share. Ang ano naman sa most interviews kailangan ng recording, no? because recording, it is where we can have the exact words mentioned. If we do grounded study, we really have to look for the common answers. So it's very important that we do the recording. Okay. Lalo na pag thematic ang approach mo. Kasi titignan mo yung anong common na sagot nila doon sa mga tinanong mo. So you need to transcribe yung recording. Okay, interview. Yeah, may preparatory. You set the setting, establish rapport. Okay, and then recording. And then of course closing. Importante din yung maramdaman nila na after parang debriefing. So kasi yung iba talagang mag-share. May mga iiyak, may tatawa, so kailangan i-debrief para makalimutan nila yung nangyari doon bago maghiwalay or bago mag-end ang interview. So ibalik mo sila doon sa kanilang state of emotions para tapos na yon yung kanilang pag-share doon. So nabigyan na ng liwanag or moment na gather yung data. So kailangan din magkaroon ng debriefing lalo na sa mga participants. Okay, observation. So we do that in the experimental, in the ethnography. So make sure that you have the checklist, schedule, time sampling, mechanical instruments, video, lahat. Tapos may guide ka. So you have your consent. So these are examples of the Likert scale. Yung Likert scale is the responses of perception. So may choices ka and it is good that you always have to look for the intervals for interpretation. Lalo na dun sa Likert scale, yung kanyang ranges, ang kanyang responses. So responses, you can Google naman There are a lot of responses that would be appropriate to the manner of your variable or study. So you can Likert scale responses. Ayan, mga ano bang gusto mong responses para dun sa appropriate So you can have like this Is it the level of acceptability? So totally unacceptable, slightly. Okay, is it a knowledge of action? Never true, rarely true. Okay, is it reflect me? True of me, beliefs, importance. So these are some, Marami siya, Okay? So pwede kang pumili dito, Depende sa tanong, Are you looking at the frequency? Never, rarely, sometimes, often, always. Okay. Are you looking at the level of concern? Okay. Level of problem? Ayan. Yan ang mga ranges, Awareness, familiarity, probability, agreement, ayan. Difficulty. So ayan, ang daming nakalista, no, ng Likert para doon sa scaling mo. Ayan. So you can search it, no? Yung Likert scale response options. Okay? So pwedeng gamitin, pwede itong i-search para doon sa instrument, no? Especially if your instrument is constructed, no? Researcher constructed research instrument. And then your interpretation, no? Importante yon kasi para sa analysis. Okay? So you can always Google this, no? Paano i-divide yung ranges, no? Kasi yung iba 7 ang choices. So paano siya i-divide, no? So may standards yan. Okay, descriptive statistics are the normal percentage, tally, frequency, mean, mode, median. So these are descriptive statistics, no? Presented in tables, figures, okay? To interpret, of course, to interpret data and analyze, no, the gathered data. So we use the descriptive analysis, no, to begin with, no. Yan, mga variance, no. So papunta na tayo doon sa inferential. Pero kung titignan lang natin yung standard deviation, mean, mode, okay? So ang tawag doon descriptive analysis, no? Yan, mean, median, mode, standard deviation. Okay. So standard deviation is how far it is to the central or to the mean, no? So how far it is. The more it is towards 1 or higher, the more that you're creating a bell shape, no? So ibig sabihin, yung mga responses mo talagang nag-spread out. Hindi siya concentrated dun sa kung lahat sasagot ng 3, so how will you have your standard deviation? So wala talagang deviation kasi lahat sila sumagot pinaka-highest sa 3. So hindi siya nagbe-bell, no? Yun naman ang ano natin sa statistics, right? Sabi naman ng iba, there is really no bell shape, no? There is. Kaya nga nagbe-bell shape siya kasi nga you cannot control the responses of your respondents, no? So talagang it will create a bell shape. Kaya yun ang pag reliable ang instrument mo. Okay? Ibig sabihin, mayroon talagang sasagot dun sa dulo, sasagot dito sa dulo. So nakikita yung saan ang gitna. So it creates a bell shape. 'Di ba yung sinasabi nating squidness, no? Skewness. Tama ba? Yan. Yan. So hindi na siya nagbe-bell shape, no? So yung skewness, no? To the right or to the left. So maraming sumagot, nag-a-agree, maraming nagdi-disagree. So ang kanyang anong tawag dito? Nipple. Ang kanyang ganito nandito, no? Okay? So ito yung positive, ito yung negative. So hindi siya yung bell shape na sinasabi. Okay? So sabi ng iba nga, wala naman talagang bell shape. Now, meron siya kung talagang yung sumagot, no? Una, kaya nga pag sinabing quantitative ang method mo, you make sure na maraming participants. Kasi pag maraming participants, yung Likert scale, hindi siya talaga nakokontrol. Meron talagang sasagot ng 3, Sasagot ng 2, sasagot ng 4, sasagot ng 5, sasagot ng 5, sasagot ng 3, sasagot ng 1. Pero kung nag-Likert ka, tapos 20 lang ang sasagot, tapos lahat ng sumagot 3, 3, 3, 3, o di wala talaga siyang bell shape. So it's either positive or negative. Hindi mo makikita yung bell. Kaya yun ang isa sa mga requirements, no? Pag nag-quantitative ka, mas maraming participants, no? Mas nagkakaroon ng dispersion yung responses. So mas naiinat, no? Yung ganyan. Okay? Nahahati siya. Makikita mo yung mean kung saan. So the standard deviation is how far is it to the mean. Okay? So pag masyadong maliit, ibig sabihin yung bell mo pag ganun, masyadong stiff, no? So mas maganda yung naka-spread out. Okay? So ibig sabihin na talagang nakukuha, no? Nakukuha ng mga kumbaga nag-react ang mga nag-respond, no? Talagang pinag-isipan siguro ng mabuti, no? Yung kanilang pagsagot, no? Dun sa questionnaire. Okay. Okay, so we have this, no? Standard deviation. Okay, we also have the frequency, percentage, ranking. So we can have that. No? Yeah. So when we present, we always present with this, no? May standard deviation, may verbal, and then to some may ranking, no? But since kung ito lang, no, limited lang. So pwede kang mag-rank. But usually it's the weighted mean, the standard deviation, and the verbal. If this is a Likert, no, inventory or survey questionnaire using a scale. So may verbal interpretation, may standard deviation, may weighted mean. Yeah. Inferential statistics, it is using now techniques, no, in interpreting data. This is usually used, no, when we do significance, no, hypothesis testing. So we do inferential statistics. So finding relationship between variables. Diba? It is usual our third or fourth statement of the problem. So after getting the level of perception or level of something, no, performance, usual, no, the usual SOP, demographics, and then we go to the level using the variables independently, no? And then after that we go to the hypothesis statement. Is there a significant relationship? Is there a significant difference among students' performance when analyzed or when measured according to demographics? So that's the third or the fourth statement. And then usually the fifth statement is what courses of action. So ito na yung implication. This is now your breakthrough, no, sa research. Ano ba ang pwedeng gawin na makapag-contribute ka, no, after analyzing the data? So what are courses of action? So these are basis for what? Program development. So ito na yung mga courses of action. Ito na yung mga i-recommend mo. So pag hindi mo siya isinulat doon sa state of the problem, it is expected that you will write this in your recommendations, in your implications. Okay? Kasi what meaning would data give if you cannot forward, no, how to better off the situation? Kasi yun naman ang purpose natin, para matulungan na ma-solve ang certain problem. So we need to look into the implications. So para saan ba to? So ano ang pwedeng gawin? Okay? So yan kadalasan ng mga last statement. So yung inferential, ito yung testing the hypothesis. No? So may relasyon ba? May significance ba? So we use the Pearson, okay, the X and the Y relationship. No? We use the analysis of variance, no, covariance. So we use the chi-square. Okay. So ayan. So ayan, Spearman. So these are common, no, correlation. Okay, in the inferential statistics. So sabi nga nila, meron talagang statistician to look into that, no, based on what question that you would like to ask. Okay. So if you forward a hypothesis which is always implied, no, which is explicit, pag ikaw ay nag-quantitative, talagang meron kang i-measure, no, iti-test. No? So that's your hypothesis. So you use the inferential statistics. Okay. Okay. So ito na yon. Hopefully, makabuo na tayo dito ng ito, yung method natin. Okay. And then I have here an example before we end our discussion. Meron akong sample dito ng saan ba yan? Here. Okay, I have a sample here. Ito yung sinabi natin kanina, no? Yung sa ating methodology, no? How do we select a sample? So, a sample, theoretically, no? Halimbawa, ito yung buong Amerika. So, that's the population, no? So, ito yung the general population of America. So, theoretically, so ito yun, no? And then you get the study population. So, this is the set or people that would be part of your study. But unfortunately, hindi naman sila lahat masama because maybe somehow too many of them. So what we do, still part of a scientific approach, is we get the sample frame. No? So the sample frame, it is the representative of the population that we identified. So ito lang yung, sila lang ang part ng ating study. So this will now reflect the population. So kailangan natin silang mapili ng husto. Yun naman ang tinitignan sa research. Now, if you notice, I think you can have that, no, in the documentation of ito, lumabas na, di ba, yung social weather survey, social weather station, SWS, yung Pulse Asia. So lumabas na, no, na out of the 34 million voters, nasa 1516 lang ang kanilang ini-interview, no? Sine-survey. Yun lang ang kanilang pinupuntahan, no? Out of 34 million sa buong Pilipinas. Ang sinasama nila, no? Yun ang kanilang sample, yung sample, itong mirror, no? So ito yung of course 110 million tayo, tapos ang botante is 34 million, eh ang dami nun. Ang kinukuha lang nila is nasa 1.5. So kailangan talaga nilang makuha yung perfect, no? Yung scientific. Paano ba pipiliin yung 1.5, no? Sa 34 million? Kaya it is a process, no? So they really have to do hybrid randomization. Okay? So random meaning equal chance of being picked. Pwede tayong mapuntahan ng Pulse Asia sa bahay, no? Kasi buong Pilipinas, no, nag-randomize sila eh. So ginamit nila yung talagang scientifico, no? Na dun sa 34 million na botante, 1.5 lang ang kinukuha nila. And to think, dun sa kanilang survey, talagang madalas hindi sila nagkakamali, no? Sino yung papasok sa ganito, sino yung ganito. So tested na, no? Tested na ang kanilang approach. Makikita naman sa Google 'yan. So paano sila nag-construct ng kanilang sample population. Okay? So talagang ano daw, as far as Sulu, as far as the Batanes, hindi nila alam kung saan manggagaling. Kasi random eh. Tapos pag nakita na, pupuntahan. Ganun ka kaya ganun ka expensive, no? Yung pure random na survey. Kasi nga it takes a lot, no? Para makita mo yung mirror na yan, no? That mirrors the entire population. Kaya please do not use random when you don't really randomize. Kasi usually ang ginagamit, I use random sampling method. How do you conduct the random? Sir, yung una kong nakita, hindi random yun. No? Kasi random is equal chance of being picked. So kahit in a classroom, 50, you don't say random, ikaw na. No, dapat lahat sila. Pwede silang mapili. So how can you do that? Pwede kang mag-raffle, no? Small paper, lagyan mo ng pangalan ng 50 ka-estudyante. Tapos put that in a box and then choose. So that's random, equal chance, no? Para mapili, di ba? So that's really pure randomization. So lahat sila may chance. I remember one time, no, when I was still part of the FEU, no, for the central government, yung kanilang yung aming government, no, ng student government. There was a time that the dangerous drugs, 'di ba? May randomization ng drugs, no? Yung check ng drugs. It is of course nandun ang CHED, no? Nandun ang Dangerous Drugs Board. So legal siya, no? Na pupuntahan ng school tapos magra-random test sila ng drugs. Okay? So takot ang eskwelahan kasi kami yung pinuntahan, no, yung student affairs. Tapos paano pipiliin, no? Paano magra-random? Siyempre yung ibang estudyante sasabihin, "Ba't ako?" Di ba? Ang galing kasi meron silang software. So the registrar was asked to put the names of the database, no? Lahat ng names ng estudyante nandun sa data. Tapos naglagay sila ng software. And then makikita mo talaga yung software nagra-run, no? Random. So nandun ang mga pangalan lahat, 20 mga, di ba? Kung 24,000 ang estudyante, nandun yung mga pangalan ganun. Kasi ang kukunin lang 30, no? I think 30 or 35. So pag nag-stop siya, nakalagay doon, for example, Mateo Makalagi. So hanapin na si Mateo. So titignan kung may klase ba siya ngayon. Nandun naman ang data sa registrar. So may klase siya, puntahan doon sa classroom. So pipick upin ka na sa classroom. Tapos magkakaroon ng interview doon sa clinic. Kasi kakailangan ng consent, no? Papaliwanag sa'yo. Kasi magda-drug test random. So sasabihin sa'yo na walang makaalam sa result ng investigasyon ng test, no? Ikaw lang at saka yung nagkakandak, no? So hindi siya pwedeng ilagay sa newspaper or sa no, na masira yung mo. So there is still confidentiality. So gano'n, no? Halimbawa, absent si ganito. So next. So that's randomization. So lahat talaga equal chance na mapili. Okay? Hindi yung by convenience na pinili mo. That is not random. That is convenience sampling. Okay? So, careful tayo sa paggamit. Okay? Now, we have the variable. Okay? So, these are the variable. We also, the responses, no? Sila yung magiging basihan, no, ng ating data. We have the sample. Okay? And then we have the parameter. So, yung population. Our statistics is based on the sample. The entire population is our data. No? This is now our population parameter. Okay, so we have qualitative measures. So those that are on Quali Approach. No? So Quali Approach, you don't really need hypothesis. No? So it's not really testing hypothesis. It is building your own theory. No? So that's what qualitative measure is. No? So you are building your own theory. Okay, you are building your own theory. You want to find out, and from there you can create your own statement. No? And perhaps later on that statement can be validated. It can be hypothesized. Otherwise, quantitative is testing hypothesis. So there is already a statement, a theory established, and then how this theory is measured. So we want to test the theory based on the variable. Okay. So Quali is more on the in-depth, no? Interview, observation, documentation. So Quali, we have the one we mentioned earlier, ethnography, phenomenology, no? Phenomenological approach. No? So a phenom is sometimes considered as philosophical perspective, approach to qualitative methodology. Okay. So we want to understand how the world appears to others. So it is a very subjective experience and interpretations of the world. So phenomenology. Okay, we also have field research, participant, no, observation. We also have grounded theory. So the grounded theory, it is until you reach that level of saturation. Okay? So pag naka-collect ka na ang data mo, no? You will be coding responses, memoing, and then put that into what we call thematic. Okay? So ito yung grounded theory, no? Okay, so you want to create a category out of the responses. No? So kailangan mong i-code hanggang maka-come up ka kung ano yung pinaka-common. So kung paulit-ulit na yung sagot nila, ayun na yung common. No? Okay, so it is from nothing to a category. So it's a grounded, no? Grounded theory, grounded approach. So there is already this saturation. Okay, saturation. So paulit-ulit na yung sinasabi nila. So yun na talaga ang pinaka. No? Naabot na yung saturation. Yung sinabi ng isa, sinabi na rin ng isa. Okay. So yun ang pinaka contextual, no? Na meaning doon sa isang phenomenon. So qualitative methods, participant, direct observation, interview, case studies. So ito yung para sa qualitative. Sorry, nawala na. Okay, ito pa. Ayan, sinabi na natin yan. Quali. Okay. So, quali and quanti, no? Pag deductive, so this is the quantitative, no? So, from a theory, okay, from a particular theory, then you move on to hypothesis. So, top-down approach. From the hypothesis, you observe. From the observation, then you come up into the confirmation. So you are now confirming or not the original theory. Okay? So this is now the deductive reasoning, the approach of quantitative. So may theory ka, gusto mong i-confirm or depende na kung ano yung mangyayari sa data mo, no? So from the theory, you will hypothesize, and then from the hypothesis, you will treat it. So you do the observation, and then from the observation, you gather the data to confirm or not, no, the original theory. So this is deductive. No? So this is now the quantitative, from the general to specific. Now, this is inductive. Okay? This is inductive. So, inductive meaning it is bottom-up approach. So, from observations, okay, nag-observe ka, and then you see a pattern, and then from a pattern, then you create your own preconceived statement. So, that's that hypothesis. And then from there, you can have a statement of that phenomenon, and that is now the theory. Okay, so from the observation, you can develop a statement, and that is the theory now. So this is inductive. Okay, this is inductive. So this is qualitative. From nothing, you build a theory. Okay, so it is inductive. Well, the other one is deductive. From the theory, you want to confirm. So you have to test it. This one, from observation, you are creating a statement of a phenomenon. That is a theory. Okay, qualitative data, in-depth interview. Okay, we probe the ideas, no? Direct observation, written documents. That is content analysis. Okay, so ito yung mga ethnography, phenom, research, yan, grounded. Yung sinabi natin kanina. Okay, qualitative, you can do snowball, chain sampling, deviant sampling, homogeneous sampling, convenience sampling, opportunistic sampling. No? Snowball or chain sampling, ito yung wala kang kakilala. No? Wala kang kakilala dun sa gusto mong studyhan. Meron ka lang isa, informant. No? Informant. So, from there, siya yung mag-identify kung sino yung kasama niya, no? Na parehas ang kanilang characteristics na hinahanap mo. So that becomes snowball. So meron siyang i-recommend na isa, so hanggang lumaki yung ball, no? So it becomes a snowball. It is a chain sampling. Of course, we know what is deviant case, no? Halimbawa, yung mga in conflict with the law. Yan. So talagang deviant, no? So yun ang pwedeng magiging sampling, no, dun sa ating qualitative. Kasi qualitative is purposive, no? So alam mo talaga kung sino yung makapagsagot sa tanong. Okay? So purposive. Hindi to para sa lahat, no? Para ito sa specific na talagang sila ang sasagot dun sa problema or sa phenomenon. So it is homogeneous. Okay? Parehas sila, no? Parehas sila. Okay? Parehas sila. Hindi ka na kailangan mag-randomize kasi dapat parehas lang sila, eh, no? Hindi na dito mag-randomization kasi hindi to marami, no? It is purposive. It is already identified. Qualitative does not need a lot of participants. In the focus group, you can have six in one setting. Marami na yon, no? Marami ka ng recording nun. Kasi magkwento sila na magkwento. So hindi mo kailangan marami. So yun ang qualitative. Kasi it is in-depth, palaliman, no? Para makuha mo yung, para ma-observe mo, para makapag-create ka, no, ng pattern. Makakuha ka ng pattern dun sa kanilang sinasabi or yung mga narratives nila. Okay. So yun ang qualitative research. Yan. So ang quantitative, random usually, no? Qualitative, it's open, less structured protocol. Ang tools, structured data, interview, no? So it's interactive, no? Narratives. Ang results produce generalized statement, no? Or summary. Sa quali, kinukuha natin yung meaning, no? Yung experience, yung view sa kanilang sarili, no? Doon sa question or sa phenomenon na meron sila, no? So it's more on the meaning. So that's phenomenology. Okay. Yan, ganun pa rin. Quali, it is to organize data, identify your framework, then you sort the data, coding, so whatever you use, and then use the framework for a descriptive analysis, no? So balik ka doon sa framework mo, ano bang gusto mong i-theorize, no? Para makabuo ka, no? From the observation, the pattern, then you begin to hypothesize, and then you create, no, the theory. Okay. So that would be the step 5, no? The second order analysis. From quali, you can test it, no? So magiging mixed method na siya, no? Ayan. Pwede mong ma-test yan. Okay. Aha. Hindi ko ata nalagay dito. Sorry, ha. I should have ended. Okay, here. Ito na talaga. Sorry. I have here a sample. Okay. This is a sample of my instrument, no? I had this, no, when I think I mentioned it to you, no? I had this when I presented a paper in University Technology Malaysia, no? Sa isang conference, no? So, pag nag-submit ka, kailangan nila ng ganito. So, I prepared, no? Abstract, anong purpose, design, practical implication, value, and then yung, ayan, rationale, objectives. So, ito na yung, ito na yung questionnaire, no? Na sinasabi natin para sa task number 3. No? So, this is now the questionnaire that we have to prepare, okay, to answer our statement of the problem. Yan. Ito yung questionnaire na sinasabi. So ito yung sinasabi kong attitude. This is Likert, no? Using Likert. So not true of me, ganyan. 5 scale. Ayan. So as much as possible, nasa isang page lang siya, mag-fit in para hindi na siya lipat-lipat, no? So naka-fit into sa isang page. Ganyan. Now, we notice here that there is a positive negative statement. No? So this is also permissible just to check. No? I-check mo kasi, di ba pag nag-exam tayo ng psychological test, paulit-ulit ang sagot, paulit-ulit ang tanong, no? Sa psychological test. Kasi talagang tinetest tayo, no? Na binasa ba natin, no? Kasi pwede siyang paulit-ulit para ma-test natin kasi testing no? Testing whether these are consistent, no? Consistent ba ang pagsagot ng mga respondents, no? So pwedeng mong ibaliktad ang positive sa negative statement. Okay? So pag negative statement, ang projected, no, ang pinaka implied na sagot dito is hindi totoo yan sa akin. So ang pinaka-highest dito na sagot is 1. Kasi nga negative, no? I am not aware of any outreach activities that involves my school to benefit the community. Dapat ang sagot ng ini-expect mo dyan is hindi totoo yan sa akin. Aware po ako. Yun kasi ang pinaka-logic, no? Kaya ang ini-expect natin na sagot dyan is 1. Okay. Demonstrating good communication skills is enhanced while joining activities for the community. That is positive. Ang ini-expect natin na sagot dyan is 5. So pag negative 1, pag positive 5. No? So yun ang ini-expect natin na sagot. Okay? Kasi ito yung mga choices. Now, I have here an example. So ito yung example ko ng Likert scale. Now, sometimes yung Likert or yung checklist, no, na questionnaire, hindi natin maistorya kung ano yung buod niya, no? So pwede tayong magdagdag ng open-ended. So this is the open-ended, no? So meaning to say, what do you think are the benefits if you and your school involved in activities to benefit the community? Parang inulit ko lang yung questionnaire, no? But this time I wanted to hear from them. No? So this is another technique, no? Kasi later on, pag na-explain natin to, na quantify natin siya mathematically, meron pa rin tayong ay nako, ano bang meaning nito? So pwede tayong mag-create ng isang space, no? Para sa isa pang open-ended. Para dito naman verbal, no? Talagang ma-share nila ang hindi nila na-share dito kasi check lang to no? So dito, this can be a very good scaffold, no? So pwede itong magiging sandata mo later on. Pag nag-explain ka na, no? Pwede kang humugot dito na ito pala yung sinabi nila na sinagutan nila dyan sa taas. Kasi ang sagot nila sa taas walang explanation just checklist. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nito, this will justify now here, no? So it will add value dito sa questionnaire, no, na meron kang checklist. So pwede kang maglaan ng isang tanong diyan. Kasi ang tanong dito, ang tanong ko dito pares lang naman diyan Pero not anymore a checklist but their own words, no? And somehow this will explain later kung ano yung results diyan. Magagamit ko to, no? Okay? So pwedeng gano'n, no? Kasi 'di ba, isang beses lang tayong mag-cascade ng questionnaire. So pag hindi natin yan naitodo, mahirap balikan, no? Kaya dapat kailangan nating pag-isipan kung natanong na ba, nailagay na ba lahat, no? Para later pag-analyze, sure na, no? Okay? Now, 'di ba sinabi natin descriptive analysis, no? Titignan natin yung mean, mode, median. So it's usually the mean. Okay? Yun ang tinitignan natin, yung sentro. Now, paano to magiging sentro na ito, highest is 1 kasi this is a negative statement. This one, highest is 5 kasi this is 5. This is a positive. So dapat ang sagot, very true of me. So saan ang gitna? Ito naman ay 1, dito yung 5. So if you will tally this one now, pag itali mo to, i-reverse mo tong negative into the assigned positive. So this one becomes 5. The 1 now becomes 5. That 2 becomes 4. That 3 is 3. Pag sumagot siya ng 4, ang value nun 2. Pag sumagot siya ng 1, ang value nun is 1. Okay? Kasi our highest is 5. So since the desired answer negative is 1, so 1 must be 5. So yun naman ang titignan natin pagdating sa pagtatali, no? So pag nagtali na tayo, no, we can use the ordinary Excel, no? Or okay, ito, let's say Excel. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, no? Meron tayo talagang grades na I kept the grades of all. Kaya hinihingi ko yan sa mga teachers, no? Professors natin. Okay, let's try Excel. File. Mag-open tayo. Let's say new na lang. Okay. So pag can you see my screen? Ha? Okay. So pag
Yes po,
okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay, let me go back to my let me go back to my okay. So ito na, no? Please take note here dito sa aking instrument, no? Yung aking instrument, naglagay na ako ng A1, A2. So hindi naman alam yan ng respondents, no? So these are my codes later on para hindi ako mawala, no? Okay? So parang nag-design ka, no, para sa sarili mo. So A1, that is enrollment status. Dalawa lang ang choices, full-time, part-time. Okay? Tapos pag part-time, employed, self-employed. Age, specified. So walang choices. Tapos gender, that's A3. Male, female. So bakit meron ako mga number? Ganyan. Lahat yan, hanggang dyan may number. So naka-number siya. Kasi pagdating natin doon sa pagtali, no? Doon na tayo sa Excel. Yan. Pag nagtali tayo dito, itong column na to, no? Yung A, itong column nito, yan. The vertical, this will now corresponds to the this will now corresponds to the okay, for example, ganyan. Well, let's start with the second. Okay. Itong vertical na column, ito yung mga ito yung respondents mo. So, si respondents 1, respondent 2, respondent 3. Tapos yung horizontal hanggang dulo, yan ang kanyang mga sagot. Sagot niya dun sa questionnaire. So, yung column B mo, we start with A1. No? And then this is A2. Okay? For example, no? Okay, this is let's say A2. A2, A3, A4. Ayan. Halimbawa si A3, ang nakalagay doon is gender, male, female. So, lalagyan mo na siya doon, male is 1, female is 2. So, male is 1. Halimbawa, yan. Si respondent 1 is male. So, ang ilalagay mo is 1. Okay? Tapos, male pa rin to. Male. Tapos, female. Male. Female. Male. Female. Yan. So, halimbawa, 3 ang choices doon. Sa question number 4. So, mag-assign ka 1, 2, 3. Now, bakit ina-assign natin yung numbers? Kasi this is easy. Later on, pag meron ka ng statistician, easy na to para sa SPSS. No? Kasi binabasa niya yung numeric. No? So, alam mo naman kung ano yung 1, ano yung 2. So, mag-assign ka. No? Okay. Pagdating doon sa attitude na, okay, halimbawa, nandun na tayo sa attitude. No? So, this is now the attitude, let's say B1, B2. 20 yun eh. Yan, B3, B4. So, lahat yun. No? Sa B1, di ba negative statement yun? Our first statement is negative. Okay? So, pwede mo siyang kulayan kasi this is a negative statement. Halimbawa, itong B1 na to kasi sinabi doon negative. So, this is already a negative statement. Ayan. Pwede mong kulayan. So, pwede kang mag-assign ng color para magiging negative siya. Okay, halimbawa ang sagot ni respondent 1 is, di ba sabi natin 1 is the highest. Ang sagot niya is 1. So pag i-record mo, magiging 5 na siya. Okay? Kasi negative to eh, no? Itong B positive. So normal, no? Alam ba, 4 ang sagot niya. So 4. Okay. 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, ganun. Halimbawa, 1. So walang problema dito kasi positive. Pero yung negative, i-reverse mo. Okay? So yung 1 magiging 5. So pag na-reverse na to, okay? So pag na-reverse na siya, for example, no? Yan na siya, no? Halimbawa, na-reverse na natin yan. Yan. So yan na yung mga sagot nila, na-reverse na. Okay? So this is now your B2, B1. So reverse na siya. So hindi na kailangan to kasi negative, nagiging positive na siya ngayon. So parehas na ang kanilang range, no? The highest is 5. So from there, pwede ka nang mag-compute, no? For example, ng standard deviation, ng average. Yan. So this is now your average, 4.41. Yan. So pwede ka nang mag-compute ng average, ng mean. Okay? Sorry. Okay. Ayan. So pwede mo nang ma-compute. So this is now the mean of item number 1. So this is the mean of item number 2. Okay? So that is how we do, no? When we now tally our data. And then the SPSS will run it. So pwede mo na siyang from this, compare mo sa meron bang difference ng kanilang attitude when measured by gender. So pwede mong ito at saka yan at saka ito i-analyze, i-interpret, no? So this is now cross-sectional, no? So yung A3 gender, i-match mo ngayon dito sa attitude. Meron bang difference kung lalaki o babae, attitude nila towards that? So pwede mo nang i-match tong dalawa. So nababasa na niya, instead of male, female, female, male, gawin mong 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Yan. Okay? So yan ang ating gagawin, no? Pag tayo ay nagtatali na, no, ng ating mga results. Okay, so going back here. So this is now my questionnaire, no? Ayan. So pagkatapos nag-collect nun, ito nang ang output. So I was now able to write that in the manuscript, no, for the submission. So this is now the sample. Ayan. So I had this one now. The title is, I simply would like to look into yung students' engagement nila, no? An attitude towards community extension services. So this is a case study on distance education platform. So tinignan ko dito. Yan, ito yung abstract, keywords, introduction. Okay. So see, kulang ako dito ng subtitle. Okay. This is limited kasi because this is not a journal. They are just submitting. We just have to submit the book of abstract. So we are limited to number of words for the program, no? Yung kanyang program sa conference. So, ayan. Okay. So, you have to limit, no? Masyadong rigid yung number of words na kailangan. Okay. So, methodology. So, ganun lang tsaka ikli, no? Sinama mo na lahat dyan, no? And then results and discussion. So, dito sa results and discussion, ito na yung produkto ng aking questionnaire. So, yan, nakapag-describe na ako, no? Descriptive analysis. Dun sa aking mga A1, A2, A3. Tapos pagdating dito, ito na yung thematic, no? Kasi nagkaroon ako ng qualitative, no? So this is a mixed method, no? So sinabi ko dito mix, no? So this is an exploratory case. Okay? So ang pinaka point ko dito is tinitignan ko yung narratives nila, no? So ito yung sinabi nila na ano ba ang naidulot ng community extension. Kasi nga ang distance education, unlike dun sa regular schools na ang NSTP talagang may professor, so talagang may facilitator, dito sa distance education, yung NSTP namin is modular. So they have to no? There is a self exploration, no? Following the module on how to conduct. Kahit dun sa kanilang community extension, hahanap sila ng organization para mag-serve sila, para mag-volunteer. So gusto kong malaman kung ano ba ang pakiramdam, no, ng mga taga-distance education na estudyante sa kanilang community engagement. Unlike in some other schools, talagang na-identify mo kaagad yung corporate social responsibility, ano ang kanilang mga beneficiary, no? Okay, yung halimbawa orphanage. So alam nila kung saan. Ito kanya-kanya kasi sa distance. So gusto kong malaman para dun sa aking sharing, no, dun sa conference na sinalihan ko, ma-share ko na ito pala ang pakiramdam ng mga taga-distance education na students, no? baka pwede natin silang matulungan kung paano, no, ma-improve ang kanilang engagement. And then ano ang kanilang pakiramdam, no, doon sa engagement, lalo na hindi naman sila report to classroom. Sila ay distance learners. No? So ito ang kanilang mga narratives, ganyan. So again, may mga pseudonyms, no, mga alias, Perry, ganyan. So yung kanina pinakita ko, no. So may mga narratives. And then ito na yung questionnaire kanina. Yan. Yung questionnaire kanina, 1 to 10, naka-ano yun? Naka-spread out yun, pero bawat isa doon may variable na pinipresent, no? Mayroong variable yon. So yung statement number 2, 3, 10, 12, 11, patungkol yun sa self-efficacy. Itong 8, ganyan, patungkol yun sa self-esteem. Okay? So may pinanggalingan yun, no? Ayan. So gusto ko lang i-describe kung quantitatively anong pakiramdam, no, yung perception nila doon sa kanila or attitude nila doon. Galing dito sa kanilang sinasabi na self-efficacy, self-esteem. Ganyan. So kinonvert ko lang into a statement tapos measure ko siya. Ayan. So ayan. So yun ang produkto, no, na ng isang questionnaire. Okay? So ito yung questionnaire tapos nakabuo ka ng essay na nanggaling siya sa data na na-collect. Okay? So okay. So again, sorry. Nandito na sa classroom ang ating module 3, ang ating task number 3. So sa task number 3, pwede po tayong pumili, pwede tayong maghanap ng ating mga instrument, pwede namang ready na siya, no? Pwede namang ginamit na siya ng ibang researchers, tapos gagamitin natin, or pwede talaga siyang panel data na meron na tayo sa office na collect na, then we want to treat it, no? We want to measure, no, using a variable, no, na pwedeng gamitin para relevant dun sa data na meron tayo. Okay? And again, hindi ito yung talagang full-blown thesis or research na gagawin natin for our subject. So I'm here sharing to you some ideas on how to do that or how to make research after this course. Pag nandun na tayo sa ating thesis 1, thesis 2, project 1, project 2. So dito ay gusto ko lang at the end of this term magkaroon tayo ng isang essay, no? Kaya nga tinatawag ko lang essay, no? But it's a research base. So parang pilot testing, no? Para maramdaman lang natin yung procedure. Hindi necessarily na sagutin natin lahat ng tanong. Pero kung meron tayo talagang time, kaya nga we use collaborative para magkaroon tayo ng mas magandang output, no? So we can collaborate, no, for this subject na may gagawa ng ganito, may gagawa ng dyan, no? Para tignan natin kung saan tayo hanggang, no, sa December. Okay, so we cannot have 200 plus respondents. That's impossible. We can make use of the Google form. We can make use of other platforms, no, to collect the data. Okay? Para makapag-analyze tayo na align dun sa ating sinasabi or sinishare ngayon. Okay? Yeah, question. Gender. Gender is the independent. Okay. So I guess sobra na naman tayo sa time. So thank you so much for your staying tonight for our class. If there are some questions, if none, then we can share our camera so we can have a photo op. Salamat sa pagdalo. Sana yung iba hindi na naliligaw, ha? So meron tayong research, no? So ang ginawa natin is that sama na tayo lahat, no? And then meron tayong classroom. So meron tayong i-report doon. So sana hindi na sa email. Nakikita ko kasi yung iba sa email. So i-transfer natin sa classroom. I-transfer natin sa classroom yung ating submission kasi sa email nawawala. Okay? So that's the danger there. Kasi araw-araw ang dami nag-i-email. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. Meron tayong 4 na screen. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Magandang gabi, Paul. Okay. 1, 2, 3, third screen. Okay. 1, 2, pang-4. Ayan. Okay. So, good evening. Maraming salamat. Maayong gabi.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Doc.
This is recorded, so please share this para mabalikan natin yung mga discussion and then ma-share natin sa iba, no? Wala dito ngayon. So, man ang iba na naroon ngayon nasa offshore. So, good evening. Yung iba siguro maaga pa sa kanila, sa atin pag 10 o'clock na ng gabi. So, happy dinner ba or late dinner na? Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you po.
Thank you, Doc.
Good night. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'll stop